Apple. For decades, that name has been totally synonymous with innovation. A tech giant that didn't just build products, it literally shaped modern culture. But lately, there's been this feeling, right? A sense that something's different. In this explainer, we're going to dig into the argument that Apple might be up against its biggest crisis yet, a crisis of innovation.
No, really, just think about it for a second. When was the last time you watched an Apple keynote and were just genuinely speechless? That feeling like you just saw a piece of the future. If you're kind of struggling to come up with an answer, you are definitely not alone. The whole conversation has shifted from what incredible thing did they just do to, okay, how much more is this one going to cost? And that shift, well, that's at the very heart of what we're talking about today.
To really understand where Apple is now, we have to go back. We have to look at its golden age, the era that was completely defined by its co-founder, Steve Jobs. This was the time that set the bar, that made Apple an icon, the company that taught all of us to think different. See, under Jobs, Apple was way more than just a tech company. It was a cultural force. You think about the original Mac or the first iPhone. These weren't just small improvements on what was already out there. No way. They were revolutionary leaps that created entirely new categories of products. Every single launch had this incredible wow effect. It was that relentless chase for something new, something different, something totally focused on the user that built the legend of Apple. But then a massive shift happened, the transition to Tim Cook's leadership. And this wasn't just a new CEO taking over. It was a fundamental change in the company's DNA. The entire philosophy driving the world's most valuable company was about to be rewritten. The focus was about to pivot from creating jaw-dropping products to focusing on the bottom line. And what's so fascinating about this slide is how clearly it just lays out these two completely different worlds. Steve Jobs, he was the artist, obsessed with the customer experience. Tim Cook is the master of operations, obsessed with efficiency and shareholder return. So one era gave us revolutions. The other, it's given us refinements, safer bets, and really predictable upgrades. The goal stopped being about selling a dream and started being about selling a healthy margin. And okay, to be fair, under Tim Cook, Apple's financial success has been absolutely astronomical. I mean, in 2011, the company was valued at around $350 billion. By 2023, it hit a peak of a staggering $3 trillion. That's an 8-fold increase. You just can't argue with those numbers. But here's the crucial question. What was the real engine of that growth? Was it a stream of world-changing new products? Or was it something else entirely? And this chart, wow, it brilliantly illustrates the new priority. A huge driver of Apple's stock price has been its super aggressive stock buyback program. In 2024 alone, Apple set aside $110 billion just to repurchase its own shares. That reduces the number of shares out there and pushes the price up. Now compare that to the $30 billion they spent on research and development. The part of the company that's supposed to create the next big thing. For some perspective, Amazon spends over $85 billion on R&D. The numbers, they really do speak for themselves. And look, this isn't some big secret. Tim Cook has been very clear about the company's mission. Just notice the wording here. Value for shareholders, not the most amazing experience for our customers. The focus has explicitly shifted. So every new release, every price hike, it's all seen through the lens of how it serves the investor, making sure that machine keeps humming and the margins stay high. So where's the proof that this shift from product to profit has actually come at a cost? Well, you don't have to look any further than this single most important tech race of our time, artificial intelligence. This is the area where Apple's innovation engine has it's really sputtered. Hey, remember Siri? When it launched back in 2011, it felt like actual magic. It was the first mainstream smart assistant on a phone, and it put Apple right at the front as a pioneer in consumer AI. But fast forward over a decade, and Siri isn't a symbol of innovation anymore. It's kind of become a case study in what happens when a company takes its eye off of the ball. This timeline, it tells a pretty painful story. After its amazing launch, Siri just stagnated. By 2017, it was already way less accurate than its competitors. Then, when the whole generative AI boom hit in 2022, Apple was caught completely flat-footed. They had nothing. And their big response in 2024, Apple Intelligence, is mostly powered by a partnership with OpenAI. That's basically an admission that they couldn't build a competitive model themselves. The pioneer had become the one desperately trying to catch up. And that catching up? it's going to take a while. After all the hype around their new AI features, Apple itself had to admit that a truly revamped conversational Siri, the kind of assistant we see from competitors today, is still years away. They don't expect it until 2027 at the absolute earliest. So while the rest of the world was in a full-on race, Apple was just standing still. So all of this brings us right to this moment. Apple is at a crossroads. It's facing this fundamental question about its own identity. Is it still the company that changes the world, or is it the company that just manages a very profitable portfolio? This all paints a pretty clear picture of a major change. Apple has shifted from being driven by innovation to being driven by finance, and its stumble in the AI revolution is the clearest proof you can find. Meanwhile, its customers, who used to be these loyal fans, are now, you could argue, captive. They're stuck in an ecosystem that's just really hard to leave. It's the lock-in from iMessage and iCloud and all the apps that keeps people around, not a constant flood of must-have new products. And that's a dangerous place to be, because history has shown us that no company, no matter how big, is immune to disruption when it loses its innovative edge. And all this leaves us with one final critical question. Is this all part of some calculated long-term strategy? A different kind of game that focuses on sustainable profit instead of risky innovation? Or is this a sign that the company that once told all of us to think different has actually forgotten how to do it itself? The answer to that is going to define not just the future of Apple, but probably the future of technology.